All right, so y'all have finished reading, and right before you started reading, I told you one of the big catchphrases for this section was what? What was the word I told you?
It was manifest.
Very good, Dylan. It was manifest destiny. Okay. Now, does anybody know what the word manifest means? Alan?
Make it up.
Not make it up. But what?
Make yourself known.
Make yourself known is closer. One of the kind of basic. Ethan, can you sit down? Okay, thank you. The word manifest means to make something obvious or obvious. So y'all are familiar with the word destiny. Okay. Anybody want to explain what destiny means?
I'm not sure what it means, but I can tell you again.
All right, go ahead, Tyrell.
It means something that you're trying to get to, maybe?
Something you're trying to get to. It has to do with the future, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, Dylan, what does it mean with the future?
It means, like, if say you die, you want someone to remember you by. Like, that's your destiny, maybe?
Well, not exactly, although from the Star Wars movie, we know that certain people had their own destiny. Sean?
Your destiny is what you're supposed to do, like what people think you were supposed to do.
That's exactly right. It's either what you're supposed to do or what people think you're supposed to do. So when we tag it with manifest means to make it obvious. It's what is as a country, what is our obvious destination. So our obvious destiny, not destination, but our obvious destiny is that we, as a people, were put here by God and ourselves on the eastern coast of North America. This was where the original colonies were. It was our obvious destiny that we should move west, kill the native people, take their land until we got to the Pacific Ocean. Then from there, it was our manifest destiny to go out into the Pacific Ocean and to take Hawaii from the people that live there, and so forth. That's manifest destiny. Alan, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was going to say destiny can also be compared to a short-term form of predestination.
Very good. Short-term form of predestination.
So we've been doing this like all since before. We've been taking over land and killing the people who had and making new colonies. So we've been doing that before.
Ever since our country started. Ever since even before our country started. Okay? Now, there are a few things I want to touch on here. Here's the term manifest destiny. The PowerPoint is on my webpage, so you can go ahead and get the PowerPoint from there. Okay? But the manifest destiny, it says the United States has a duty to rule ocean to ocean. Now, in nowadays times, it's real easy to look back on the history of what we've done as a country and point to how mean and bad we have been, because we've done some mean, bad things. But at the time, settlers in our country thought it was just a wonderful thing to move west and conquer the land and the people that were there. Sometimes there were native peoples in areas, and sometimes there weren't. But that was just kind of the way that it was. But it was obvious that we thought we had a duty to do all this. Okay. All right, now, who's ever heard of the Trail of Tears before? Most of y'all have. Beckworth, do you remember why in our area here in North Alabama we know about the Trail of Tears?
Because they went through here.
They did go through here. And how do you know that? Even if we didn't have history class, how would you know that part of the Trail of Tears went through North Alabama?
Because you can see them when they go through.
Who's they?
The motorcycle.
Right, there's a big motorcycle rally that's the Trail of Tears. So why do you think that, bless you, why would you think that these motorcycle guys would want to do this ride?
Does it kind of have to do with like destiny?
Well, not exactly. What do you think, Sean?
Help you remember.
To help remember, because even if we don't teach it in class, this certain group of people want us to remember how mean and bad white people were to the native American Indians that lived here. Okay, so that's recreated every fall. And the Indian Removal Act was awful and it was terrible, and it forcibly removed Native peoples from the Southeast. It was unconstitutional. There was a Supreme Court case, went all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled that they could not be removed, but Andrew Jackson, in his infinite wisdom at the time, decided that it was best to tell all the Indian peoples to leave. Even the Cherokee, many of the Cherokee had adopted what we would consider European-style living arrangements. They had houses and farms and things like that, and they still made the move. So this is one of those really bad things that happen in our country. The way that we treat Native peoples is really bad. Yesterday we read in Section 2 about how the British treated Native peoples very bad, but please keep in mind, 100 and 200 years ago, people didn't know it was all that bad. They just thought they were out there living their lives. Just like you brought up Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone didn't go there to Kentucky just to kill Native people. He went there to live and to start his own settlement and all that kind of stuff. But when you look from history standpoint, they did bad things. All right. So this is just one of those bad things in the history of our country, the Trail of Tears, Indian removal, and the way we treated Native peoples in general as we continue to move west. Okay, next question. Who were the original illegal immigrants into the state of Texas?
Mexicans.
You're completely wrong, and you didn't pay very close attention to your reading. Americans were the first illegal immigrants. So I love hearing people talk about illegal immigrants today. Oh, we need to stop illegal immigration. We need to stop illegal immigration. What most people don't know is the original illegal immigrants were Americans. Now, y'all remember that Texas was part of Mexico. Okay? So Texas was part of Mexico, and if you look on our map right here, this is the United States, here's Texas, here's Mexico. Mexico owned all of this in the early 1800s, but there weren't very many people living there. Now, the Mexican government wanted to encourage people to live there, but do y'all remember at the beginning of the year when we talked about patterns of colonization, who could tell me what the pattern of colonization was for the Spanish? Alan?
Build a mission, kill some people, move on.
Okay.
So they were the first illegal immigrants.
They were, okay, thank you. The Spanish were the first illegal immigrants into Mexico. But here's my first question for you. Did the Spanish settlers bring their whole families with them to Mexico? No, they did not. They basically came over mostly men, some families, but mostly men, right? So there weren't a lot of Spanish people in Mexico. It was a lot of indigenous people still in Mexico and a few Spaniards. In the state of Texas in the early 1800s, the Mexican government wanted people to live there. Why would any government want to encourage people to move there? Yep. Taxes, exactly. And where did taxes come from? People doing what? Working. And every time you work, you pay tax, and then you take that money and you go buy stuff and you buy land. So yes, governments want people living on their land. And since Spanish people wouldn't come from Spain, the Mexican government said, hey, you Americans, we got free land in Texas. Okay? So they started to encourage Americans, okay, to go to Texas. A lot of people from our area here in Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and other parts of the South moved to Texas. So many of us moved to Texas that the Mexican government at one point said, stop, no more Americans can come to Texas. Because there were too many Americans in Texas, no more Americans. But you know what happened? This is a pattern that you might see repeated. There was something called chain migration. We still see this today. But those Americans that moved to Texas loved it. Beautiful land, rolling hills, plenty of streams and rivers. Great, very few native peoples to have to kill. And so they sent letters back to their cousins and friends back in Alabama, in Tennessee, and Kentucky and said, hey, come on to Texas in the spring. It's great. it's great here. So Americans kept moving to Texas. But remember what the Mexican government said?
No more people.
No more Americans. We got too many Americans in Texas. Well, those were the original illegal immigrants. People kept coming. Why? Great land, great stuff, and all that. Now, Texas, cow, they brought cows with them, and there were some Spanish cows. Now, let me see. Okay, so, and I'm going to run through this real quick because this isn't American history, but all this is part of manifest destiny. It's all part of, in some ways, these were the democratic ideals that we had, part of our manifest destiny, right? That people could go do what they wanted to do on barren land. You had your own laissez-faire rights to go ahead and conquer this land. So that was all part of it too. Now, eventually, the people in Texas that were living there, they had a disagreement with the Mexican government. And then there was this, y'all remember the Alamo? You've heard of that before. The Alamo was not part of a war between the United States and Mexico. It was part of a war between Texas people and Mexico. All right, so after the people from Texas got their independence, they were their own country for 9 years. Now, let me just tell you, and repeat this, Texas was its own country for 9 years. Now, if y'all ever go to Texas, I'll just let you know, the people in Texas are very, very proud of the fact that they are the Lone Star State because they used to be the Lone Star Republic. They were their own country. Don't mess with people from Texas about this, okay? It's just a matter of fact. They were their own country, okay? Now, the Mexican government didn't like them being their own country, and after 9 years, Texas started looking around and saying, you know, this United States, you know, all of us, for the most part, came from some of these other states here. Let's join the United States of America. They've got this union there. They called the United States of America. So the Texas people joined the United States of America. The Mexican government did not like this. And so the Mexican government started to complain about it. We didn't like the Mexican government complaining about it. And so one day there were a couple of Mexican army guys on their horses and they crossed a river. And we said they crossed our river and they said that was their land. So it was what we call a border dispute. Now, we were offended. So somebody wrote a letter to our president. The president wrote a letter to Congress and Congress got really offended. And they said, we declare war on Mexico. So thousands of Americans got on their horses and rode down to Texas and then invaded Mexico. Now, why is this important? Because after we fought in this Mexican-American war. We fought in this Mexican-American war. And after it was over, we conquered Mexico, but we didn't want to take all this land because there were already people there, I guess. But we confiscated all this land from California, Arizona, New Mexico. All this land here became part of the United States. Now, there were people living in California, too. There were Mexican people living in California, and they had large estates and huge land grants, which was part of Spanish colonization also. But this is how we pretty much found a way to take a whole bunch of land, because in war you break things, you kill people, and you take their stuff. So we took all this stuff over here. You'll learn more about that with Coach Bishop when you take U.S. history, and you'll also learn about the Gadsden Purchase. And also, I don't think we're running out of time here. I'm going to wait till we get to the Civil War tomorrow. But one of the cool things about the Mexican War that we fought against Mexico, it trained a lot of army officers. And most of the guys that fought for the United States against, don't put your stuff up because we're not really done. Most of the guys who fought against Mexico were from the South. So when we get to the American Civil War, one of the things we find out is that the best generals, the best leaders in American military were from the South. And that was one of the things that helped the South. But yes, you're right, Ethan. We didn't have the equipment. You're getting into all the stuff on this American Civil War. We will touch on that briefly tomorrow.